we're going to be talking about the best films to watch while stuck in isolation. So I'm going to be giving you my top 5 films to watch on the top 3 streaming services. That's Netflix, Amazon Prime, and NowTV. Let's do this. Hi guys, welcome to the Realtors YouTube channel. I'm Gary and I'm going to be going through my top 5 recommended films to watch whilst you're stuck at home in isolation over the next couple of weeks. Now these films aren't going to be the obvious choices. They won't be sort of your big franchises, the ones that everyone has seen, the big releases. I'm trying to do something a little bit under the radar. I'm sure some of you will have seen some of them, but hopefully there'll be some in here that you won't have all seen. If you haven't got all 3 of the streaming services that we're talking about, we've got the different time codes coming down the side here, so just skip to the time code of whichever streaming service you have, or all of these are available just to go and rent online and things like that as well. So if you want to see 15 in total, stay tuned and watch the whole video. Let's get going. Now over on Netflix, my number 1 pick of what you should watch, especially if you've got children at home, is Missing Link. Now Missing Link was up for the Best Animated Film Oscar earlier this year, and it lost out to Toy Story 4 in what was one of the biggest travesties of the Oscars this year, I think. Missing Link is an animated film in the vein of a lot of Aardman stuff, so if you like Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, that sort of stuff, there's a lot of visual gags in it and some real tremendous humour in it. It was directed by a chap called Chris Butler, who also did Paranorman, so if you're a fan of Paranorman, then you will also like this. Now I watched it as a fully formed adult and I had a big massive grin on my face all the way through watching it, so it's fantastic for children if you've got children or are going to try and entertain kids over the next couple of weeks. But if you're just a fan of good old slapstick animated humour, then you will also love this as well. It was directed by Chris Butler, and Chris Butler is from McGull in Liverpool originally, and obviously Realtors we here are based in Liverpool, so always fun to salute Liverpool filmmakers. Now it also has a fantastic cast of Hugh Jackman, David Walliams, Stephen Fry. There's loads of different voices in there that you'll recognise, and this is my top pick on Netflix for children to watch. My second pick on Netflix is the 1997 action romp Breakdown. It was directed by Jonathan Motzo and it stars Kurt Russell and Kathleen Quinlan. And if you're a fan of Steven Spielberg's film Duel, then you will love this. It's a fantastic mystery action film, one of the real unsung heroes of 90s action cinema. If you could merge together Duel and Speed and The Fugitive, it's got that mystery element to it with a lot of action in there as well, and it's a real short, snappy, pacey film as well that'll keep you guessing right through to the end. Some wonderful set pieces in it, and it will have you punching the air in delight come the end of it. Plenty of practical effects, which I'm always a big fan of as well. If you haven't seen Breakdown, check it out, or if you have seen it but not for a long time, this is the perfect time for a little bit of escapism. Next up, and our third choice on Netflix, is a horror film, so it's the first horror of the list, and it's from 2016, and it's the Iranian film Under the Shadow, which was directed and written by Babak Anvari. It tells the story of a mother and daughter living in 1980s Tehran. The war is still going on in there, and then something comes into their house and begins to haunt them. Now, this is a tremendous film along the lines in terms of tension as The Babadook, so if you're a fan of The Babadook, this will be right up your street. I remember seeing it in the cinema when it first came out, and I think I hit the ceiling about 6 times with different jumpy parts throughout it as well, but it is more than just a jump scare horror. There's some real heart in this as well. So that's Under the Shadow for pick number 3. Check it out, let me know your thoughts. Our fourth pick on Netflix is the 2017 film Okja. Now Okja was directed by Bong Joon-ho, who obviously struck gold in Hollywood earlier this year because Parasite, which he also directed, just cleaned up across all of the award ceremonies. And if you're a fan of Parasite, then I would definitely recommend checking out Okja. Now tonally it's quite different, there's a lot more humour in this, but there's some real heart as well. Some of the performers in it you will definitely recognise, such as Tilda Swinton and Paul Dano, who I think are 2 of the shining lights in the film industry at the moment. It tells the story of a young girl who risks absolutely everything to try and keep hold of her best friend, which is a fantastic beast called Okja. It's a giant pig-like creature that's been genetically modified and is absolutely huge. So it's kind of got similar vibes to E.T. the Extraterrestrial as well, with the authorities coming and taking away a child's best friend. Now it was actually co-written between Bong Joon-ho and Jon Ronson, so if anyone is a fan of Jon Ronson's work and some of his other books, if you've read them, you'll know the sort sort of dark humour and political themes that will be evoked throughout the film as well. There's a fantastic chase sequence that takes place in the middle of a shopping centre as well. I would definitely recommend this, especially if you're an animal lover. It's 2 hours of just joyous escapism. There's also some heartstring moments in there as well, so get the tissues, get your snacks, enjoy. And the fifth choice on Netflix is Sad Hill Unearthed. Now, Sad Hill Unearthed is a documentary about a group of friends who all live just outside of Bilbao in Spain, and they are massive fanatics of the Sergio Leone film from 1966, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, which also starred Clint Eastwood. Now, part of the film was filmed just outside of Bilbao, and they created the cemetery set at the end of the film. Now, the cemetery in the film is called Sad Hill. And over the years, since it was filmed in the mid-60s, it's completely overgrown and all covered. It wasn't a real cemetery. It was one built completely for the purpose of filmmaking. And they decided to go down and excavate this old cemetery. And it becomes so much work that they can't possibly do it amongst themselves. So they start to get friends helping them out. And then people start hearing about all of these guys who are trying to dig up this old cemetery as a film set. And they start traveling from all across the world to come and help. They set up a GoFundMe page, and you get other famous filmmakers from Hollywood are donating some of their money as well to try and help get this old film set from the 60s open to the public so people can go back and celebrate the good, the bad and the ugly. Now obviously, being a film location fanatic like myself, this is right up my street. However, I've shown it to a lot of people who, first of all, haven't seen the good, the bad and the ugly, and also aren't too bothered about visiting film locations, and they both loved it as well. It's a real heartwarming story. And also, for an extra coincidence, I'm sneaking in a sixth choice here, technically, but The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is also on Netflix at the moment, so this would be the perfect double bill. Watch Sad Hill Unearthed and then go and watch The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Or you could do it the other way around if you wanted to do it that way. Either or, this would be a perfect weekend double bill. However, every day is a weekend at the moment, I guess. So that's Sad Hill Unearthed. Thus concludes my top 5 films on Netflix. Over to NowTV and my top 5 picks over on the streaming service. Here is number 1, the 1953 film Roman Holiday. Directed by William Wyler, who also directed Ben-Hur, and it stars Gregory Peck, who's probably best known for To Kill a Mockingbird, and of course Audrey Hepburn, best known for the Galaxy adverts. That was a joke, of course she's not really. In a film about a princess who escapes her guardians to go out across Rome, and she then befriends and falls in love with journalist Gregory Peck. You can see this replicated in kids' films years later in the 90s in Ants, if anyone happened to see that. Now, Roman Holiday, I only saw this for the first time about 5-6 years ago, and it was one of those films that I fell in love with straight away. It's got everything you need. It's a perfect rom-com. It pulls at the heartstrings. It also acts as a postcard of Rome in the 1950s, and it just looks absolutely stunning. The chemistry between Hepburn and Peck as well is just sparks are flying all over the place, and it has an ending which I'm still not quite over. If classic golden era Hollywood is your bag, Roman Holiday is the film for you. Film number 2 over on my NowTV list is the 1979 cult hit, The Warriors. If you haven't seen The Warriors and you are a fan of 70s genre films or action adventure films, don't Google it, don't IMDb it, just sit down and watch this film. This film has been often imitated but never equaled. You will see so many things in this film, be it set pieces or moments of direction from Walter Hill, which have popped up in other things such as Tarantino films, The Simpsons, and you will get humorous references back to these. But this is where they originated from. This is busting at the seams with pop culture references. The soundtrack is fantastic, and just the overall mood of the film is something that you can really get behind. It's an action-adventure film from the 1970s, which is my personal favourite decade of cinema. It's set in the not-too-distant future, kind of dystopian, and it's all about street gangs getting together in New York, and there's one particular gang called the Warriors who are falsely blamed for a specific incident. They have to get all the way home to Coney Island to avoid all of the other gangs trying to seek their revenge. You've got chase scenes taking place on the subway, through the streets, and then back at Coney Island itself. fantastic piece of cinema. Now, of course, a lot of this film was actually filmed in and around New York, and specifically around Coney Island. I visited Coney Island last year, and in the next couple of weeks there will be a video of some of the film locations of The Warriors, so subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for that video once you've gone and watched the film for yourself. Film number 3 on my NowTV list is the impeccably underrated 1987 film Monster Squad. If you haven't seen Monster Squad and you were a fan of Stranger Things, The Goonies, a lot of those 80s vibed action adventures, this is the film which is crying out to be seen. It's about a group of nerds who are obsessed with the Universal monster movies and comics, all from the 30s and 40s, and something happens which brings all of these monsters into suburban America. They then have to try and get them back out of their world. There is a particular quote in this film which is "Wolfman's got nards," and even thinking of that particular quote just brings me out in a big stupid grin. This film is just a joy to behold. If you're a fan of the 1980s, I know they're very on trend at the moment, then go back and check it out, and I bet you £5 English sterling that you will not be able to keep a straight face throughout its 79-minute runtime. Film number 4 on the NowTV list is Black Klansman, the Spike Lee film from 2018. He won an Oscar for it, and it should have got a lot more credit than what it was actually given at the time regarding awards ceremonies as well. Now, this story is all based on true events. It tells the tale of a black police officer in America who infiltrates the Ku Klux Klan. Is he going to get found out? How far along can he get in the food chain of the Klan? Obviously there's some hilarious results that take place in here, but with a lot of Spike Lee films, it comes back to that political edge as well. The final couple of minutes alone shows you some real footage about what's going on in America today and how things have changed, or perhaps they haven't changed since. And if you haven't seen any of Spike Lee's films before, this would be a wonderful place to dip your toe in, get acquainted with one of his more recent films, and then you can go and check out some of his previous joints, including Do the Right Thing. But this is right up there. And the theme on the soundtrack, you will definitely want to be downloading that afterwards as well, because it's got a killer guitar riff. And the final choice from NowTV, our 5th pick, is Possum. Possum is a British horror film, psychological thriller, and it was directed by Matthew Holness. It's his directorial feature-length debut. People who don't know Matthew Holness, you may remember him from being in the UK Office, and probably most famous for playing the role of Garth Marenghi in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place as well. Now, this is a real seedy, sinister film, really gets under your skin. It stars Sean Harris, who people may know from the latter Mission Impossible films, and also Alan Armstrong, so 2 wonderful performances. And it tells a story of a children's entertainer who specifies in puppeteering, and he is disgraced about something that we, the audience, aren't told about. He returns home, he's obviously dealing with psychological trauma, and this puppet he has called Possum is of a giant spider, and it keeps coming back to haunt him. This film will get under your skin, it will make you feel uncomfortable, uneasy. You will definitely need something light-hearted to watch afterwards. Perhaps something like Spaced or Father Ted, something along those sort of lines. But if you're a fan of psychological thrillers or psychological horrors, this is a fantastic British art house horror. And over to Amazon Prime, my top 5 picks on here. We're starting off with another horror from 2019, and it's Midsummer. Now, people may know from watching this channel or from following my social medias that I'm a massive fan of the 1973 Wicker Man. Forget Nicolas Cage exists, that version doesn't count in my eyes. This is the closest we have come to replicating that same sort of folk horror. Now, people may know who've watched this channel before or follow my various social medias that I'm a massive fan of the 1973 original The Wicker Man. Completely forget that the Nicolas Cage version exists, that doesn't count in my eyes. But Midsummer from last year is the closest I feel that we've come to replicating that perfect recipe of folk horror from 1973. It was directed by Ari Aster, who also directed Hereditary, which I know a lot of people were big fans of. However, I wasn't a particular fan of Hereditary. I think Midsummer is one step beyond Hereditary. I think it's much better. The film also stars Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, and Will Poulter in a smaller role as well, and all 3 of those are fantastic. Such believable performances, and the ending of this film, my word, I can't get those final images out of my head. There are so many things in this that you will start watching and you will just be open-mouthed, not quite able to comprehend what it is you're seeing. Now, one of the things that I think is really impressive about the film as well is it's a horror film that takes place predominantly in the daytime. So you see some of these horrific events taking place, but it's lovely sunshine and lovely clear skies and everything, which I think gives it that real juxtaposition about the horror that you can see in front of you. If you're a fan of folk horror, things like The Blood on Satan's Claw, of course, The Wicker Man, you will absolutely adore this film. Don't let the length of it put you off. It's about 2 hours 20, I think, in total. However, there is not one moment where you'll be wanting to check your watch, check your phone. It absolutely flies by, and you will be thinking about this film for a long time after those final credits have rolled. My second pick from Amazon Prime is going all the way back to 2010, and it's a film set in 1984, directed by Taika Waititi, everyone's favourite director at the moment, I think, and it's his film Boy. If you haven't seen Boy, it's a coming-of-age comedic drama about this young child whose father has been absent from his life, but he returns home and gets to know his son a little bit more. However, we then find out that he's actually returned home to try and dig up some buried money that he left before he first ran away. There's some wonderful set pieces in there, some great moments of visual slapstick comedy, and of course with Taika Waititi you get a fantastic soundtrack, some wonderful performances, some great character actors, and a lot of familiar faces you'll have seen from his other work as well. This is such a wonderful film. It's a little bit darker than I think other films such as Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in the Shadows. It has a little bit more of a dramatic edge to it, but if you're a fan of his other work, and if you're a fan of Wes Anderson as well, and you haven't seen any Taika Waititi films, this is a wonderful place to start. And choice number 3 is the 1982 Martin Scorsese film, The King of Comedy, starring Robert De Niro, Diane Abbott and Jerry Lewis. Now, Martin Scorsese is very much a master of cinema, and this is my favourite of all of his films, and obviously there's some stiff competition, things like Raging Bull, The Departed, Goodfellas, so many classics, but this one is my personal favourite just because I think it's got everything involved in it. You've got fantastic performances, and then you've also got this wonderful New York setting, and it's all about Rupert Pupkin, who is a stand-up comedian who is not very good at his job essentially, and he craves the limelight, and he decides, because he can't get famous off his own back, he then goes and kidnaps his idol, played by Jerry Lewis, and tries to get on TV this way. It plays around with the idea and themes of being famous for all the wrong reasons, but then using that to further your own career, which I think is very interesting and especially poignant today. This film is also very much a blueprint for Joker. If you're a fan of Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips's Joker, you will love this film. If you're a sucker for New York, and especially New York in the 80s when it still had that dangerous edge about it, then I'm sure you'll be a big fan of this film. Go and check it out. You'll have a wonderful time watching it. And let's be honest as well, you know full well that if you're going to get Scorsese and De Niro pairing up, you're in for a cinematic treat. My fourth choice on Amazon Prime is Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin. And a lot of this was really interestingly filmed. I think it's one of the most interesting British films. In fact, no, it's one of the most interesting films this century so far. Scarlett Johansson plays an alien who is sent down to Earth, and she feasts on the flesh of young men. So she drives around a van in the streets of Glasgow looking for men that she can lure home, and then she devours them, essentially. What's really interesting about this film is they sent Scarlett Johansson to just wander the streets of Glasgow, and she would entice people to come into her van, and she'd flirt with them, and then they'd have to tell them this was all part of the film, would you mind being in the film, and then get the rights to sign over everything afterwards as well. Such an under the radar hit, such a fascinating piece of cinema, and the score is exceptional. I'd also recommend checking out the novel that it's based on as well. If you're a fan of sci-fi, please check this out, and also let me know your thoughts if you go and watch it. I've recommended this to quite a few people over the recent years, and it's a real audience splitter. Some people love it, some people haven't got a clue what to make of it, other people hate it. I love it, I think it's great. Check it out, let me know your thoughts. And my final choice on Amazon Prime is the 2015 film Brooklyn. I went to see this at the cinema with quite low expectations. I was thinking it would just be a middling film. I had to go to review it for a website. I loved it so much, I was in floods of tears, and then so much so that I went back to see it a further 2 times at the cinema afterwards. I fell in love with it. Saoirse Ronan is fantastic, Emery Cohen is glorious, and Domhnall Gleeson continues to be perfect in everything he's in. John Crowley's direction is subtle and nuanced, and you've also got Julie Walters, who is just the greatest mum on screen in everything she's in. All set in that glorious era of New York and Brooklyn in the 1950s, and she's an Irish immigrant who goes over to live over there. She falls in love with an Italian American while she's over there as well. There's some real heartwarming scenes in there as well, where she goes back over to Ireland and she brings back some of the New York fashions with her, and people just look at her, some of her friends and family, completely baffled about some of the stuff she's wearing and everything. I would say 99.9% of people who watch this film will be in floods of tears at about 4 different moments. It still makes me weep up now just thinking about it. I've seen this film quite a few times since the cinema as well, and it's just flawless. This is a perfect sort of Sunday evening film where you're curled up on the couch, you get a few snacks, get yourself a nice glass of wine, or to try and keep it authentic to the film, a nice glass of Guinness or Jameson's, and just feel that warm glow surround you. The final shots of this film as well will just have you grinning from ear to ear. I love this film. Hopefully you'll love it too as well. Okay, so this concludes my 5 top picks from Netflix, NowTV and Amazon Prime. Let me know if you've seen any of them before. Let me know if you're watching them now. What are your thoughts? What else have you been watching across these streaming services? Have you got anything to recommend to me? And I'll go and check them out as well. Hope you're all keeping safe. I will do another one of these videos because things are always changing and updating on these streaming services. See you very soon. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Keep it real. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more film content. And if you would like to join us for a film location walking tour of Liverpool, you can do so by booking online at realtours.co.uk.